So we're sitting down here with the former ICMSA President Pat McCormack. In terms of challenges faced by farmers from 2017 or 09, as you said, when you first became Dairy Committee Chair, all the way up to now and into the future, I suppose what are going to be, or what you believe will be the key challenges moving forward for the agricultural sector?
Well, the agricultural sector and predominantly the dairy sector that we represent in the family farm model, there are a number of challenges. One of those that's first and foremost is water quality. And if we can reverse the trend that has been out there in recent times, and agriculture isn't the single emitter of nitrates to affect water quality. There are numerous other emitters, but yet in the general public domain, we see the finger seems to point in our direction, and that's usually frustrating. But we do need to give the science and the adoption at farm level the opportunity to make a difference. Low emission slurry spreaders, protected urea, efficient and timely usage of organic nitrogen, and sufficient on-farm slurry storage are probably critical there.
Obviously, you've been now in the role over 10 years and you've been involved in the ICMSA in terms of front of the organisation, from the Dairy Committee to the Vice to the President. But I suppose in all that time, do you think the farmers are now less or more supported by the government?
Yeah, I suppose you could call it the Coveney era, and that was when the then Minister Simon Coveney was in office in the Department of Agriculture, a great era where we look forward. While our economy was in decline and in recession, agriculture was seen as the green light, which could deliver an increase in exports, delivered from a rural Ireland perspective, employment and opportunity. To the Creed era where we had a degree of stabilisation, to the era we have today where there's pressure, there's finger pointing. Maybe there isn't a significant value put on the delivery of food, because if you look over the last number of years at the crisis we've had, whether it was COVID or indeed snowstorms, the first thing to go off the supermarket shelf was consumable foods, and people are nervous. It is an essential part of living and staying alive, and at times that's undermined.
Kind of looking back at your tenure as president, I suppose, do you have any regrets or disappointments that you look back on and say, I kind of hope that it had gone differently, or I would like that to have gone differently?
Yeah, you'll always have regrets. I suppose within our organisation, I'd like to think that I've no regrets, that I left no stone unturned in trying to be an efficient and relative organisation to lobby on behalf of farmers. And when we needed to go to Egg House or we needed to sit down with the department, we did. I suppose there are many regrets outside of that, and one of those would be the Farm Management Deposit Scheme, which was an income managing volatility, an income tool to manage volatility. And I mean, you take the year 2023, it's probably the greatest case in point in comparison to 2022, where we saw anywhere between 23-25 cents a litre come off the price of milk. Farmers faced with the burden of a huge tax liability for the year 2022 and cash flow extremely tight, and that has put huge pressure out there. I suppose if there was one single thing that I would like to have delivered in that period of time, it was for the family farm model. The sole trader would have been a farm management scheme that would help him through the more challenging years, on the back of nothing other than being able to put away a rainy day fund in better times.
And I suppose you mentioned there kind of going to Ag House and stuff, and I suppose one of the more recent visits, or one of the more publicly noted visits, was around announcement of the Derogation Drop. And I suppose obviously on that occasion you actually crossed the IFA picket line, and do you feel like that was handled correctly, or how did that kind of sit with you afterwards?
Yeah, look, that whole event was nobody won out of that event, I think. Have I any regrets about that day? Certainly not. Contacted on my way into Dawson Street car park, having already seen a group protesting rather than a picket outside, went down to the Budswell to meet some of my colleagues on that given day. Met leaders and representatives of other farm organisations who at the time were going in. And I, in conjunction with my executive and with some key personnel around the country, who I saw the feeling of, felt that this issue was paramount. This issue was the biggest challenge facing the dairy industry since 1983 as regards putting the brakes on our industry. and that we needed to go in and negotiate there. At that point in time, it was very evident that 250 wasn't a runner. That was probably evident from the autumn of 2022, given that that's where water quality results were going to be based on. So we felt that, we needed to get actions taken that would minimise that result and that impact. And hopefully, we'll see those with recognition of reduced protein and recognition of the 0 to 3 month excretion level. And I think that can have a huge impact on dairy farmers. And we must remember, I suppose, that the farmers that were most affected there were dairy farmers. They're predominantly the members of the derogation. But also, on the day, and it's often lost now, was the issue of the overhang from the Farmers' Charter. And I'd have to say, in my time as Deputy President, I had very good working relationship with Tim O'Leary and indeed particularly Eddie Downey at the Farmers' Charter. And that's where you need to be, is around the table. And I suppose there was a number of issues they are facing us from the Farmers' Charter. And on that day, we did get the concession from the department that the ANC payment and the single farm payment, as it was previously known, the BIS, going forward will be paid on the traditional dates.
Just lastly then, I suppose, you kind of mentioned a lot of them already, but I suppose, what do you feel you've achieved as President, and I suppose what's next then for Pat McCormack?
Well, what have I achieved as President? I'd certainly like to say that I was relevant to the farm families, our membership. And I suppose to be relevant, I was fortunate to be probably 45 minutes from the head office for us, which is the John Feely House in Limerick. And that in itself, as well as being probably an hour from the toll bridge in Portlaoise and an hour from Jack Lynch, is at the heartbeat of the dairy industry. And to reflect the impact that policy and policy changes were having on myself and the people in my hinterland at a national level, I think was huge. Look, Brian, I suppose it's fair to say if I had gone out this time 12 months, I may have been a hero because when I came in 2009, we were at 19 cents a litre. Nobody would have thought if I went out 12 months ago that we could achieve 57 cents. But we did on the back of high input costs. And I suppose the challenge, there are huge challenges out there for us as we move forward in the very short term. Live exports, the export of calves next spring, February, March, April is critical that that's maintained and maintained for a number of years. I suppose, I was one of the youngest, if not the youngest ever, maybe national senior farm leader. I'm not sure about the other organisations, but certainly within ICMSA. As somebody in their mid-40s, and that's what I'd say, as you move beyond the 45 mark, I'd like to think that the opportunity to represent people hasn't gone away, and that I will be back in some other format. I'm not going to knock on any doors, but if somebody knocks on my door, I will always listen. It has always been my policy. And if I can contribute to the agricultural sector in the years ahead, I would only be delighted to do so, because it's about securing the future of Ireland, but it's also about securing my own personal income in the years ahead. Predominantly a dairy farmer at the start, a dairy farmer as I finish today, and hopefully a dairy farmer for 20 years to come.
Look, thanks a lot for joining us today, Pat, and appreciate you chatting to us, and best of luck in the future now.
Thank you, Brian. Always been a pleasure to liaise with Agriland and thank yourself, Cormac Farley, and indeed all at Agriland for your courtesy during the last 14 years.